back. I'm very pleased now to be joined by our first Insights speaker of the day today at 10 a.m. She will be on stage talking about the art and culture of the Dayak people. Jaina Mishra joins me now. Good morning, Jaina.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
You look wonderful.
Thank you. This is the traditional dress of India and many other parts. But yeah.
Absolutely stunning. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're here. The talk this morning, we're going to be talking about the Dayak people, and without giving it all away, just give us a sense of what we can expect this morning.
Okay, so normally when we talk about art, contemporary art, you're talking about just the visual and what you can see. But when you look at art from any part of Asia, usually there is a craft involved and there is a cultural story beneath. And it is the cultural story that we shall be exploring, because that gets gets to your soul. It's not just your eyes, it's not just your mind, but it's the soul
Sure.
that gets excited by what you hear.
Sure.
And it's not something that is obvious, so you need to get into conversation with the users and the makers in order to understand what's behind this piece of art.
I think after spending a few days in Asia, between Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, we're going to Sri Lanka soon. I would imagine that has become obvious to some of our guests in interacting with tour guides, with people ashore, with looking at arts and crafts, with exploring historical, cultural centers in these beautiful cities that we're visiting. It's nice to be able to have you to also add more context and help us understand what we're seeing.
Yeah. One of the dramatic things I'm going to talk about in this is the headhunting culture and the art associated with that from Malaysia. So
Right, and I'm not sure that I would always think of headhunting and art
And
in
art
this
together.
in the same.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So you're going to help us connect that a little
yes,
bit.
yeah. So that's going to be fun. Do you want me to talk about it now, or we just leave the secrets for later?
I think you've got to come to the talk and hear
Yeah.
about that. But the Dayak people specifically, they're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
We're talking about Malaysian
Yes.
culture here.
Yes. They the Iban people. They engaged in headhunting in the 1800s, and that is the group that we will be exploring. Plus some people from Sumatra, which is in Indonesia. So this is the belt we've been passing through. So I thought we'd begin with the Sumatran textiles and then move on to Dayak, which is really dramatic. So
Perfect.
that's later.
It's exciting to have you on board to help add extra context to this experience. I think it's almost unfortunate to travel through an area as rich as this and not understand about where we're traveling to. It's important to understand where we're traveling and to understand the people and the culture and the history. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of your background, where you grew up, and your history, your career history, and how you've come to be such a good speaker and how you've come to Cunard.
Okay, so my basic training is in physics, and I have an MBA from the best college, one of the best colleges in India. And then we moved to Singapore and Oman before that. So we've lived in 3 countries, and realizing that every culture is so different and yet completely valid. So you have Islamic culture, you have Asian culture, Chinese, Singaporean culture, and Indian culture, which cannot be defined, as anyone who knows India. So you realize that there is not just one life model, and okay. So let's start with the physics and the MBA.
Sure.
And then I started collecting small pieces of art from flea markets,
Just as a hobby.
just as a hobby. And then you read about it, and then there are online forums, and then you go down the rabbit hole and you keep
Sure.
learning more, and you want to find out about the culture, because these people are not going to be there in maybe 10 years. So you travel and then you talk to them and you realize that this is such a rich world, and you keep going down, finding out more and more about that one culture until you're just completely exhausted and you find the next beautiful thing, and then you go down that rabbit
And you
hole,
start all over again.
art and culture. And then so I have a gallery, and that makes me want to study, because there are so many things. You study more and more and more, and then you write about it, because you're finding common threads which have not been revealed otherwise. And that I'm not an expert in that sense. I'm not an academic, but just 20 years of reading and learning and talking firsthand to people from these cultures. That's what I will be bringing to these talks.
It's interesting to me that as someone who studied science and physics, that you've then also become fascinated with art.
You're on the other one.
That doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't, but when I'm in art, I'm all the time seeing patterns, which are mathematical patterns, and I'm thinking these people who made this didn't know how to read and write, and yet they are dealing with, Fibonacci numbers and things like that, which come in from mathematics. So maybe they didn't name it, but they knew the concept. So just having that background helps to connect the dots. Steve Jobs said this, you don't know how it's going to connect, but it does in the end. So that's the fun of this journey.
You strike me as somebody who's very curious about things.
Yeah, I guess that's the pain point, because you can't stop going forward and it never ends. So you never feel like, oh, I know everything. The more you know, you realize, oh, this is not the end, this is just the beginning. So you're always hungry, and I don't know if that's such a good thing. I'd rather just feel full and satisfied and know I've done everything there was to do.
But that will never happen.
That will never happen, yeah. That's the tragedy, right?
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Don't know anything. Yeah.
Well, you can help us a little bit today by helping us understand where we are, the places that we visited, and learning today about the Dayak people. We couldn't have anyone better on board to be able to explain it to us.
That I don't know. I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Thank you for breaking it down for us this morning. Looking forward to the talk this morning at 10 a.m. in Illuminations. Please don't miss this fascinating presentation. Learn about especially the headhunting residents of Malaysia and Indonesia and their deep connection to the traditional arts of that era, something we would all benefit from learning. Thank you very much for spending some time with me this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you
tomorrow.
See you in Illuminations.